Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, continuing our schedule previews of top 25 teams. And today we are taking a look at our 23rd ranked Louisville Cardinals. And Louisville is a team that when we released our way too early top 25, many people disagreed and said, yeah, they probably shouldn't be in there. Even though they're just barely in the top 25, they said, I don't think they need to be in there. And I strongly disagree with that. In 2018, Louisville was arguably one of the worst teams in all of college football, going 2-10 before they fired Bobby Petrino. They then decided to hire Scott Satterfield away from Appalachian State, and in 2019, just his first year with the Cardinals, he greatly exceeded expectations, going 8-5, including a 10-point bowl victory over Mississippi State. You know, when you're ranking teams for a brand new season, whether it's a way too early top 25 or even the legitimate AP top 25, one thing that you look at is teams that, of course, bring back tons of production, but also teams that are going to be carrying a lot of momentum into the following year. Louisville is one of those teams. 8-5 following a 2-10 season. They averaged 33.1 points per game last year, and they practically returned their entire offense. Quarterback Mikhail Cunningham, running back Javion Hawkins, who set a school record for rushing yards last year. Top wide receivers in Tutu Atwell and Dez Fitzpatrick. The only thing Louisville has to focus on and try to correct is their defense, which allowed 33.4 points per game, which was a major step up. About a 10-point decrease from the over 40 points per game they allowed in 2018. But that defense will strongly improve as well as they return 8 starters defensively. And for the first time in 5 years, we'll have consistency at the defensive coordinator position as Brian Brown is back for year 2 alongside Scott Satterfield. We know Satterfield worked wonders at Appalachian State. He's already doing so here at Louisville. And we're going to take a look at their schedule to kind of see what to expect from them in 2020. Of course, we are not predicting any of these games. None of these predictions are ours. There really are no predictions up here except for the FPI, which we will address soon. So you take a look at Louisville. They really don't get that brief grace period at the beginning of the season like many teams do. They don't open with an inferior group of 5 team. They don't open with an FCS opponent. They jump right into ACC play. Home game against North Carolina State on a Thursday night, and then they go to Clemson. You know, the team that was in the national championship last year, the team that has been the king of the ACC for so many years now, and will once again have one of the better offenses and teams in the entire country. So NC State and at Clemson right out of the gate, it's going to be a good test for Louisville. You know, it's going to be a great opportunity for them to see where they are as a football team. Is the hype legit? Because you don't have room for error against either of those two teams. And let's just say this. More than likely, Louisville will not go on the road and defeat Clemson. More than likely. But if they do, Louisville will then be the front runner to win the Atlantic Division in the ACC. Those are the top 2 teams in the Atlantic Division right now, Clemson and Louisville. And if Louisville somehow goes into Death Valley and pulls off that upset, they're going to have the tiebreaker over the Tigers, and who knows what could happen. So those first 2 games, big for Louisville, straight out of the gate, jumping into conference play. Then they get their cupcake teams in Murray State and Western Kentucky. They have Syracuse and Boston College right here, back-to-back weeks, back-to-back road games. I'm never a fan of that. I hate seeing teams that have to go on the road in back-to-back weeks. But luckily, I would say Syracuse and Boston College aren't the most daunting of tests for Louisville. They took care of Syracuse last year, 56-34. Boston College didn't really have to worry too much about that. But you look at Boston College with Jeff Hafley here, brand new head coach. A Syracuse team that 2 years ago won 10 games, but in 2019 didn't even go bowling. So while they're both on the road, they're not going to be, I think, as difficult for Louisville. Not saying they're going to necessarily win those games, but I'm certainly saying they're not as daunting as maybe some others, maybe like that Clemson game. What I view as the key stretch in Louisville's football season in 2020 starts right after the bye week. There's a chance that Louisville could be 5-1. 4-2 going in to this bye week. I view Syracuse and Boston College potential for a slip up there at one of those teams. More likely, in my opinion, it would be Syracuse. Carrier Dome, not an easy place to play, and I think Dino Babers is going to have that team turned around. So maybe they slip up against Syracuse, maybe Boston College, and let's assume they lose to Clemson. So 5-1 or 4-2 going into the bye week, but the key stretch starts with Florida State and ends with Wake Forest. I know they've got a road game against Notre Dame and, of course, the rivalry against Kentucky, which we'll discuss. But you've got a Florida State team here that luckily Louisville is hosting, but a Florida State team that might be a little rejuvenated and might be much better under Mike Norvell. You've got a Virginia Tech team on Halloween that I really view as the trap game. Keep in mind, Louisville only had 2 losses at home last year, and those were to Notre Dame and Clemson, who they have to travel to this year. And those were 2 elite teams. Other than that, they didn't lose to any ACC opponents at home. It just didn't happen. Virginia Tech could be that team that comes into Louisville and beats them. A lot of hype surrounding the Hokies this year. A lot of talent coming back for Justin Fuente and his squad. So this is going to be a crucial game for Scott Satterfield and the Cardinals. So you got back-to-back games against Florida State and Virginia Tech. Not an easy task at all. Go on the road to Virginia, who Louisville beat by 7 last year at home. But Virginia is also the reigning Coastal champions, a team that did make the Orange Bowl. Now, while they're not going to repeat as that because they lose so much, including Bryce Perkins at quarterback, Bronco Mendenhall at home is a guy that you never want to underestimate, never really take for granted. And of course, that's going to be their first road game since Boston College on October 10th. So from October 10th to November 7th, they don't go anywhere. They stay at home. So road woes could jump in there. And of course, the month of November, obviously a scary month in college football. And then Wake Forest with Dave Clawson. Yes, they lose Jamie Newman, but they had plenty of great quarterbacks behind him. Wake Forest, Dave Clawson, a team that has consistently made bowl games the past 3 or 4 years. They're not going to be elite by any means. You really don't expect the Demon Deacons to win 9 or 10 games, but you do expect them to win anywhere between 6 to 8. And even though this game is at home, and even though Louisville surprised Wake Forest big time last year, it was a big time shootout, still a chance to kind of cause a concern, I would think, for Scott Satterfield and the Cardinals. So this 4-game stretch, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Wake Forest, even though 3 of those 4 are at home, I think that's going to be the defining stretch for Louisville this year. And the difference for them between, a 7-win regular season maybe, like they had last year, or maybe an elite season like the FPI is projecting at 10-2. After that 4-game stretch, which I think is key, they've got the road game against Notre Dame, who Louisville lost to 35-17 last year at home, really held their own against the Fighting Irish, I think more so than people expected. And of course, that was back in the season opener. And then they've got Kentucky at home, who they lost to 45-13 last year. Of course, with Kentucky's fantastic system they had going, with Len Bowden lining up at quarterback, and still ended up making the Belk Bowl and defeating Virginia Tech. So, you look at this schedule, the ACC is arguably the worst Power 5 conference, and so the strength of schedule is not that high. That's why the FPI is projecting Louisville to do so well. They return so many starters. They carry over so much momentum. They have the potential to be maybe one of the most explosive offensive teams in the entire country, and I truly believe that. The only 2 losses that they had at home last year were Clemson and Notre Dame. The FPI is projecting that Louisville's only 2 losses are to Clemson and Notre Dame. Again, both, of course, coming on the road. So they have them beating Kentucky. They have them beating Virginia Tech. They have them taking care of Syracuse and Boston College on the road. So the potential is there. The schedule really lines up very nicely for Louisville. 10-2 is enough to get them into New Year's Six bowl game contention. Of course, we're not saying that's going to happen. Our predictions for this will come out in a few months. Once again, not our predictions solely based on the Football Power Index. But all I can say is things are lining up very nicely for Scott Satterfield in year 2. He exceeded expectations in year 1. Brings back one of the most experienced teams in the ACC in year 2. Offense is going to be electric. Schedule is great. Watch out for the Cardinals, guys. A couple of years ago, we saw them with Lamar Jackson and Bobby Petrino. Got as high as number 3 in the country. And I think this team could be very, very similar to the one we saw just a few years ago. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here on YouTube at The Gridiron Expert. We're just 3 teams into these schedule previews. We've got so many more coming your way, so make sure not to miss out on any of that. Don't miss out on our live streams, and don't miss out on the content in the description below. Check it out. News, updates, exclusive content that you do not want to miss from us right here at the Gridiron Expert. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here at the Gridiron Expert.